Y'all's attention at 6:30. We'd like to get started. I'd like to first thank all of y'all for coming tonight. I'd like to take this time to ask you to turn your telephones off, turn your ringers down. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dennis Tozan. I am the chairperson for the 22 election. I'd like to acknowledge the other individuals who are working with us on the forum tonight. Blaine LaFontaine is our moderator. Megan Gamard is our timekeeper. Nancy Perkins is our video manager. And Deputy Colin Landry is in the back there. If we need him for anything, he said, don't worry, he's here. And then, of course, the other two important people participating tonight are Felicia Clacco and Ernie Noblock. Our program tonight consists of questions asked of the candidates by the moderator, Mr. Blaine LaFontaine. There is no audience participation tonight beyond listening to the questions by our moderator and the answer of the candidates. For the sake of time, please hold your applause or cheering until the end of the session. Any disruption from the audience may well result in eviction depending on the severity of the frequency. I will now turn the program over to Mr. LaFontaine, who will explain our program and then get us started. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome everyone to the POA Candidate Forum that is held every 2 years before upcoming elections. The POA extended an invitation to each candidate to participate in the upcoming forums that were scheduled today, May 23rd and May 25th for the President, Vice President, and Director roles. We have tonight at 6:30, as we're starting, we will focus with about an hour-long session for Mr. Ernie Noblock and Miss Felicia Clacco. Made sure I wanted to get it right, as we did before and discussed it with her. And we also have Mr. Jerry Gillen, and we have Miss Karen Rayner, who was invited but not present tonight to our knowledge, but that will start the session at 7:30. The format for tonight will be as follows. We have emailed residents soliciting questions before the forum, and we have those questions tonight, approximately about 10 questions. I will randomly draw 6 questions approximately for the president candidates, and they are selected at random from this bowl. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to present a short bio. That was determined by a coin flip before we started tonight. And then I will ask questions in rotation, and each candidate will get an opportunity to answer first and then have a 2-minute response. This process will continue with each candidate having the opportunity to answer each question. And officer candidates will have a chance to respond for a total of 6 questions, as we discussed, that will be randomly selected. And then director candidates will have an opportunity to respond to a total of 7 questions on Wednesday night. And then each candidate, we will proceed to the closing statements that will be approximately 2 minutes apiece. When the yellow card is held, that will be your sign that 30 seconds remain. And then when the red card is held up, I will make sure to interject and tell you, please wrap up your statement. In between the presidential and the vice president section, we will have a brief intermission of about 5 minutes where the candidates will be told to go outside, and the residents, if you choose to, will proceed outside to ask any questions you have as we try to shift into the vice president section of this format. The forum tonight is live streamed on the POA YouTube channel, and we just want to ask and emphasize again that we want to thank all of our candidates for their participation and thank them for their willingness to serve the community moving forward throughout this process. And please treat them with respect, and please treat this forum with respect and courtesy so everyone can make sure that we hear the answers from our candidates. So, with nothing else, the first question and opportunity for introductions, as we just said earlier, by a coin flip, we will have a 3-minute introduction by Mr. Ernie Noblock.
Thank you. My wife, Diane, and I have been in Diamond Head for over 20 years. I've been involved with lots of charitable, social, and leadership groups during that time. I was also the council member at large in the city for 6 years, which by representing all the citizens, it actually helped me a lot being the POA president. I'm the treasurer of the Most Holy Trinity Men's Club. I've been the POA president for the last 2 years. Recently, you should have received a flyer in the mail listing all the positive things that this board has accomplished in 2 years. If you did not receive one, see me afterwards. I have some other ones. The present board has provided more transparency to the property owners than any other previous board. For example, the monthly agendas are actually published ahead of time. The monthly meetings are streamed live. A bunch of people told me that would never be done. The minutes show who actually voted for and against each motion. Property owners are provided time during the meetings if they wish to address the board. Updates related to covenants and other issues are published on the front page of the Diamond Head News every month. And I've personally been available to any property owners who contacted me and met with them. For the covenants, we need to make sure we understand a little of the background. It's a convoluted mess. Okay, we must obtain a final ruling from the Mississippi Supreme Court. Mississippi has basically no laws dealing with HOAs or POAs, but in other states, they've already adopted things that if your covenants expire, here's what you do. Unfortunately, we don't have that in Mississippi. Our POA is the largest one in Mississippi by far. We have estimated over $20 million worth of amenities that we have to operate and maintain. Obviously, if we start to lose amenities, our property values will decrease. The key to all this is the POA board has a fiduciary responsibility to supervise and maintain all of our amenities. Fiduciary responsibility basically means make decisions that are in the best interest of the corporation. Some ask for a specific plan for what happens if covenants expire. The Futures Committee met for 7 or 8 months, and then we realized we couldn't make any decisions based on what we know and what we don't know at this time. No one knows exactly what's going to happen. Unfortunately, it may be another year or so before we can get a final decision from the Supreme Court. The board has been attempting to attract a wider variety of customers to the club. If you go over there on the weekends, especially on a Sunday, it's very obvious that we have been successful. A couple of key things. Do you realize that you can have 7 new board members every 2 years? 7 new board members out of 11. Decisions made by one board don't have to be followed by the next board. The board has negotiated with the developers at Diamond Head to have their subdivisions become part
Please
of the
wrap up your
POA
statement.
and pay dues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noblock. Now for your introduction, Ms. Felicia Clacco.
Hope that's working. Can you hear me? Good. I'm Felicia Clacco. I've lived in Diamond Head for 24 years, and I absolutely love it. Some of you may know me as a State Farm agent. I did that for 18 years, ran that business, worked in finance and banking for years, so I've got a lot of business under my belt. I was also with the Women's Club for many, many years, where we always met at the country club for most part. Haven't been there in a while, but love this place for sure. I've paid my dues for 24 years in Diamond Head, and I stopped in protest to the actions of this board for a few months, but I decided that wasn't working, and what I really needed to do was pay the dues and run for office to make a change. I know the POA is a nonprofit that isn't going anywhere. It is perpetual until by a vote, but I believe the direction of this board has taken excludes one important ingredient: the membership. We've forgotten the people who built the POA with their dollars for decades, and I know when I say decades, I mean many years for myself. This president promised to include the membership, but the moment he took office, he said to this membership, pay us or sue us. And that's the way I took it as a member. I didn't take it very well. There was zero input from the members about the amenities or the amenity they would value in the community after the decades of paying so much dues to build these very amenities. Retention becomes an important part of this, so as people leave this POA, and I have seen the documents, 30 to 35% have opted out, $850,000 in bad debt expenses now on the budgets for 2022. As people opt out, we have to wonder what we're going to do to replace dues. You are not going to replace dues by making the country club public. You can try, but you're not going to replace millions of dollars. What do I mean by retention? In insurance, we said something about retention, and it was important. No retention, no prevention, you don't have a business. If you write 10 cars and you don't retain them, you're constantly treading water. If you write 10 cars and you keep people happy, then you're writing number 11, 12, 13. You're building on that retention. But if you decide you don't need them, and you write 10 cards and 5 people disappear, then you're constantly climbing a mountain trying to get back to where you want to be with that income. Retention matters. Members matters. So it's important that we get those members back in. I understand this fiduciary responsibility thing, but people, this has been on the board since 2008, and only this board decided to bring it back out. This is not new. This is not new. Going for lawsuits and trying to force dues on the membership was come up in 2008. So having it here right now is not new. And I hope to change that.
Thank you. Now we will move into the questions part of the forum. As we decided since the introduction was Mr. Noblock, we will start with Ms. Clacco on the questions. I will randomly draw the first question, and you will be given 2 minutes, and then a 2-minute response from Mr. Noblock. Question 1. What would be your number one goal as a member of the POA board if elected?
Okay. The first thing I do, the number one goal, is to keep the dues and to keep the retention. I would like to see the people who've paid here for, I know, 24 years for myself, the people who have put the work in actually benefit from the amenities. That's what I would like to see. So the first thing I would do is open a 90-day window with mail-out forms to communicate with the membership. I would like members to get back with me with information. We do a check on, expand the committees to have people reach out to the members for input. I would provide the transparency that is always promised but never provided, and I know that he says it's transparent, but I have been trying for weeks to get financial information that's being refused. A little bit of information that I was able to get frightened me when I saw the retention loss, when I saw people leaving, I saw people unhappy, and I'm going to tell you, talking down to them is not changing that at all. So that was important to me. I'd close board meetings, as he would say. I review the board to ensure steady and equal policy on covenants. And I take a real good look at what members really want. What amenities do you prefer? What do you really want from this POA? Has anybody asked? I know no one asked me when they said pay me or sue me, and that was really relevant to me. So we need a POA. It's not going anywhere, but it really needs to operate more fully in response to its membership. We've got to keep our member base. You cannot replace $1 million with country club meals. You're not going to do it. So I believe that that is very important to all of the members.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Clacco. Mr. Noblock, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, number one, I would try to keep the everyday activities going as best we can because I think that's important to a lot of people. We also need to make progress on the lawsuit that's going on. The committees work fine. They actually put out information asking for volunteers to be on the committee, and then they get to participate that way. The poll is, she's talking about polling 5,000 something properties, okay, or trying to have a public meeting to find out the input. That's going the exact wrong way. I've dealt in large school systems. We had 84 schools, 55,000 kids, 7,000 employees, and 100,000 parents. You don't go to them and ask those kind of things. What you do is come up with a suggested plan of attack or a plan that you're going to do. Then you make go public, and then they get the input at that point. Trying to do it the other way just creates chaos. Think of trying to be in a meeting and ask 400 or 500 people, what do you want? It simply doesn't work. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Moving on to question 2. Mr. Noblock, we will start with you. I pay close attention to our POA candidates. I appreciate anyone who is willing to volunteer to serve with no compensation. I do not appreciate it when an individual promises to serve and then does not attend meetings or perform the job one has promised to perform when asking for my vote. Will you attend all meetings and perform the job you are campaigning to hold?
When I was on the city council, I attended 143 out of 144 council meetings. I have never missed a POA meeting in the last 2 years. Thank you.
Ms. Clacco?
I'm a retired insurance agent. I sit at home and watch TV. I will have plenty of time to dedicate to the POA, and that's a fact. As a matter of fact, I'll have time to do polls. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to question 3. It'd be Ms. Clacco. What is your plan for our amenities without covenants?
Well, without covenants, that's a long shot, because what we need right now is to get to work on that possibility in the future today. We don't need to wait for a lawsuit. We need a contingency plan to do something now. You don't close these you don't close all these amenities. These are valuable and important properties. And while I don't believe that Purcell really cares what we do with them, as long as we manage them well, I do believe that they'll be around, but we have got to make that a plan for the future. If we actually lose money, I suppose that's what your question is. If we lose the dues, what do? Pay for play. And pay for play requires that we still keep our customers, our people, our dues-paying members, even if that is by a contract or by some other reasonable agreement or some other form of membership. We need to keep our community, keep it well. Other than that, the only thing that we can do with these amenities, if we lose the money, is let people vote on what they want to do with them. And that's something you need to think about. It takes a year to a year and a half while we're waiting. If you want to go to the city, we have to vote on them. If you want them to be sold, we have to vote on them. If you want them to be anything else to happen to them, we have to vote on it. Those things are not going to happen without a board vote for these amenities and without a vote from the public. Do you want it to go to the city? You actually have to vote on it. We don't make that decision in locked behind doors where people can't hear about it. It needs to be done. And actually, we need to be thinking about it now, because if something does go wrong, we need to have a plan. We need to be prepared. We need a contingency plan without waiting for a lawsuit, for sure. And we can call it that, contingency. If you really want to keep suing people, we still don't need to wait while you sue.
Thank you. Mr. Noblock, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, my opponent mentioned the right of first refusal. In her writings on social media, she said that the members have the right of first refusal. That is entirely incorrect. That's actually the Purcell Corporation, and we're not even sure that exists today, because the Purcell Corporation doesn't exist anymore. It was bought out by another company. The city may be an option. I've mentioned that from the very beginning. We're not sure. We've talked to them, just some general ideas. But I agree that we need to start talking with the city in case something happens. They would have to implement a millage rate. If they took over all the amenities, it would take about 33 mills to do that. That will never occur. Okay, so we have to work that out. Our budget, we projected a very conservative budget, and we're well over $100,000 above what we projected for this year. So we're doing okay with that. We also have a reserve fund set aside of a substantial amount of money in case we have hurricane damages or so forth. We've also gotten 1.6 million or more in grants and so forth, which has been a big help. And we have another grant which we've been approved for, but the money hasn't come in yet, and it's a substantial amount of money. So you can plan to a certain extent, but until you know exactly what's going to happen, you're still guessing. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to question 4, which will start with Mr. Noblock. There has been discussion of the number of lawsuits the POA is involved in, and the cost of the legal fees and the suits caused for the POA. Have you ever participated in a lawsuit against the POA? And if yes, please explain why.
No.
Is that
I don't have anything else to say. No.
all right? Ms. Clacco, if you'd like me to read it again, but just your 2 minutes starts now.
No, and I wouldn't suggest you take anything on Facebook as being fact book.
All right. Any? That was easy. Question 3 and 4. Thank you for your efficiency. We'll move along to question number 5. Ms. Clacco, we'll start with you. We continue to debate the legitimacy of moving the covenants into the bylaws in 2010. I understand this action is in the bylaws and recorded in the clerk's office. I also understand that a legal opinion is just that, only an opinion. It will require a ruling by a judge to determine its legitimacy. What will you do to expedite getting this issue before a judge to get a ruling on its legitimacy?
I wouldn't delay it any longer. It definitively has to go before a judge, or we're never going to get anywhere. As from what I understand, Mr. Noblock would like to take it further to the Supreme Court. But I agree that we definitely need to get this before a judge, because although a vote was taken on the bylaws by a limited number of the membership, it did not meet the requirement that our covenants say 85% of our membership should vote to amend or change our contract, our declarations and CC&Rs. That was not done in the bylaws or in that meeting with a limited number of membership. It wasn't fair to the membership. It wasn't fair to exclude people, although you will insist that they did not. They did, in my opinion. So my idea is that, yes, get this before the courts as soon as you can and get it done.
Mr. Noblock, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, the POA board at that time in 2010 followed the advice of the attorneys at that time, and they followed the procedure that the attorneys outlined. Everybody had the opportunity to vote. Whether or not they voted, I don't remember. But what happened once it was approved, then as Ms. Clacco, as my opponent said, it was filed in the deed book or whatever it's called in the Hancock County Court, so it became part of the bylaws. When it becomes part of the bylaws, we then have the fiduciary responsibility to follow what's in the bylaws. And if we don't follow what's in the bylaws, then we can be sued individually, and I can tell you 2 people who will sue us, and guess what? That means your directors and officers insurance will no longer support you. So you can be sued individually. Okay, I'm not in a position to be able to do that. She also just said, basically, that if you get an answer at a lower court, don't go to the Supreme Court. Well, that's not performing your fiduciary responsibilities, because you're supposed to act in the best interest of the corporation. So you need to think about that one. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Moving along to question number 6. Mr. Noblock, you will go first. As a board member, your participation on committees where a large part of the work is done before making recommendations to the board will be important. You may be asked to participate on up to as many as 3 committees, and what is the one committee you have the most interest in serving on? The committees are administration, golf, recreation, marina and airstrip, the house, which is the restaurant and club, or grounds, or safety.
I'm first, right?
Yes.
I was actually the chairperson of the Futures Committee trying to look into the future, and as I mentioned earlier, we just came into a dead end because we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. So I've been in that. I have not been involved directly with the other committees, but I get the information from them and try to synthesize it to myself, for myself. Thank you.
Ms. Clacco, you have 2 minutes.
I'm fortunate enough to be retired and at home watching TV all the time. I would be glad to be on any commission that is necessary. Okay? So I think Futures Commission is very important to me because that's where you actually do the research and the homework on the statistics of this POA concerning its financial status, its growth, its members, etc., and how that will affect our future, and what we can do to keep our amenities the way they are without telling our members to go away. That's it.
Thank you both. This concludes our question session. We will move towards the closing statements. Mr. Noblock, you have 2 minutes for your closing.
Okay, my opponent does not seem to have been involved with community activities in the past here. I've attended literally hundreds of community activities. As far as I can remember, the first time I actually saw my opponent was at a forum last Thursday when we both spoke. Conveniently, she kind of forgot to mention, or she did a little bit, that she had contacted me several times by email in the last year saying ask the POA to stop sending her statements showing she was in arrears because she was not paying her dues. As she mentioned, she did have to actually go to the POA office, pay her back dues so she could run. Property owners in this election have a very clear choice. You can vote for someone who has participated in very few activities, was not paying her dues, does not seem to have any background in working with large public groups, seems to think that social media will solve everything. You probably know that members not in good standing for vote for officers, but not directors. That's because of the wording in one of the original documents. Based on what my opponent has written on social media, she appears to be trying to get property owners who are not in good standing to elect her to the POA. Or you can elect someone who's been active in the community for a number of years, has been the POA president for 2 successful years, has actually worked with large public groups, and intends to continue to make fiduciary responsibilities for the benefit of the POA. So I ask for your vote in this election to re-elect me as president of the POA.
Ms. Clacco, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. I'd like to say that I haven't seen him either, and I'm sure other people have seen me around. Very active at one point in my life. This candidate has a list of accomplishments, but those accomplishments haven't stopped 35% of members from opting out, and I question that number because I believe it's higher. I have to ask, do they matter? Because they matter to me. It doesn't mean his accomplishments are bad. It means they are missing the full support of the membership. And although he may create another list, he's not creating more people to pay him dues, and that's a significant problem. This candidate's 2 years' experience doesn't make him an expert, as his being in many clubs does not either. This is evident by what he has done in that 2 years. He also started with no experience. But with the expertise we have in our current POA, management experience is easily gained. This candidate doesn't include the full membership, and he's angry because I've said non-standing people can vote, and yet that is a part of his very own POA arrangement. It's just a fact, and people should be able to vote and represent themselves if they choose to. I've been here 24 years, so I certainly know how Diamond Head was developed. The lawsuit, in my opinion, was not in the best interest of the POA, period. So it has set us back unnecessarily, and we need to make up for time. I spent years here in the ladies' club meetings, but I won't even go into that. I don't believe that is necessary for this position. My background is in the public sector. I am a team player. I know how to make money when it's necessary. I believe in real transparency, especially financial transparency. Other than that, I would say if you want change that includes all of this membership, I would ask you to vote for me and not this candidate, because ultimately we need to pay for our amenities and we need to be inclusive, because if you believe telling people they don't matter is going to work, I disagree.
Mr. Noblock, Ms. Clacco, thank you both tonight for your attendance, your professionalism, your honesty, your ideas. The membership appreciates those responses. Since everyone was so efficient with the questions, opening and closing, we will take about 10 minutes and we will invite those candidates outside. Anyone who wants to ask questions, feel free to visit with both candidates outside. And with 10 minutes, at about 7:10, we will look to transition into the vice president section of this forum tonight. Thank you.